Military history is just not my thing. I don't learn much from it. I'm not much engaged with it. I find it a little boring, to be quite honest with you. But when I walked the battlefields of Gettysburg, it really did resonate. I didn't really care for all the information about the soldiers were flanked here and they came around the bend on the other side. Rather, for me, it was the topography, standing there thinking of what it must have sounded like and smelled like. And when I went to that little village and I was able to walk around and gather some information about how people of the time had felt and smelled and heard the explosions and the sounds, that is what much more resonated with me from a historical point. And while there, I picked up a very small book, one that I would highly recommend. It's so small and easy to read. It's called At Gettysburg, What a Girl Saw and Heard of the Battle by Mrs. Tilly Pierce Aylman. And it really does sum up what was going on in the minds of the people, the citizens at the time that Gettysburg was being fought. I do engage, however, in one part of military history, and that is when George Washington tried to form the Continental Army. It was an all-uphill battle. Men were coming from different sections of the country. They had different idiosyncrasies. They spoke differently, the southern soft tones, maybe the nasal quality of somebody up in the New England states. And they all had their ideas about liberty and freedom. And it was something that was spread and talked about in brochures and newspapers throughout the colonies. And then they were to come to the Boston area and come under some structural command of the military and different leaders in Washington. And you can kind of understand how some of the men probably felt that, hold it, this telling me what to do bit doesn't quite go with me. So that was part of the problem that George Washington faced. One of the reasons I'm so interested in this particular period of history is because the military, the army, was the first symbolizing of a nation. They didn't think of themselves as a nation at that time. They certainly were not states. They didn't have any central government of any type. They did have a Continental Congress, but that was rather weak and anemic. And so for the army to have this symbolic unity behind the words of liberty and freedom and what that meant and what we will do to achieve it, I think is really important, and it's also really rather big to think about, and one that I truly find interesting from that period of history. There's also something that, when we talk about the difficulty that George Washington had in trying to bring these men together into a fighting organization, there was a man by the name of Jabez Fitch. Now, I'm sure he was a nice man. I don't know anything other than to say that he probably had high regards for what he was doing in the military and had aspirations, along with many of his fellow citizens, of freedom, being apart from Britain. And he was in Roxbury. His little command structure, if you will, was under a truce flag. He was right next to the British soldiers. And in that time and space, people knew each other on both sides, and they probably had names that they could toss back and forth and share stories about, and that is exactly what Fitch did. We know that he did it on at least 5 occasions. And at one point, he actually writes that he has proposed to erect a coffee house for the convenience of such conversations. And George Washington, you can just about see him pull his hair out, and you can almost imagine him writing to his wife, Martha, "What the hell am I doing here?" And he made it quite clear to Fitch and to everyone else in an order that there is a manner and fashion in which our side, the hierarchy of the army, will communicate if and when to the other side. And Fitch, you are not a part of that. It's just a funny story and another slice of history. Have a nice day.